Yo everybody, and welcome to a special video where I will be talking about the team card competition. So there's basically a competition going on where multiple groups of people join forces and create a card, which is pretty amazing and a lot of fun to do, and especially since I was asked to be a judge. And well, I want to show you the cards that I was judging for and what I thought about the cards, and tell you my thought process, show those cards to you, and give a bit more platform to the people who are making these cards. And hopefully more people will get to know about this. So what is going on in this card competition? Well, basically there's a challenge every week. And the challenge this week was create a unit with a trigger that includes the words bordering your base. And I need to give a score on 3 different points. And that's basically the concept, the idea of the card. So do I like the idea of the card? How does the card ID fits in the whole of Stormbound? Then the balance is the stats of the card. So basically, is it OP? Is it really bad? Is it really top-notch balanced? So, well, obviously that makes sense to give some feedback on. Obviously it is difficult to say if a card works or doesn't work without even playing with it. But hey, we have to do something, right? And then the third criteria is the design. Basically, if you're gonna make a construct, does it fit in the construct theme of Stormbound? And is there like a flavor of the card? Does it something new, interesting? And oh, that's basically it. So concept and design feels a little bit similar, but I will try to do my best to keep them apart. So let's continue with our first card. And this is created by the Star team. At least I know that it's Truxis and Artis Rue in this team. Not sure who else is in the team, but well, let's look at the card, right? So they created Notorious Buccaneers. And Notorious Buccaneers is basically on play, draw a card for each enemy bordering your base and reduce its mana cost by 1 while it is in your hand. So that's a pretty interesting story, or ability I need to say. So what happens is if you play this card, then you will draw additional cards if your hand is empty enough. Like if you play this as last card and your opponent is bordering your base with 4 enemy units, then you will draw 4 cards. And all those cards will be cost or mana reduction by 1. And that mana reduction by 1 stays until you play the card. If the card goes back into your deck, then the mana reduction is removed. So we have a pirate, 4 mana, no movement. So stat wise, 4 out of 3 is not that good. 4 out of 4, 4 out of 7. So basically the leveling steps aren't that interesting. It's just a minor curve. Like here it goes with 33%, here it goes with 25% power increase. So it becomes a bit weaker. Might have been a bit higher on the later levels to make the higher levels a bit more exciting. Since some cards, as you may know, have like a scaling curve. And this is like a dropping curve. So I would like to have at least a steady curve, and so then most likely this would have been something like 8 or 5, 7, 9 or something like that. I'm not sure if any of its ability can be improved by leveling. You can make a limit on draw many cards, like draw up to 1 card, draw up to 2 cards, something similar like that. But how often will you face an opponent with so many units bordering your own base? So I hope you have some time to think about this card yourself as well. At least let me go to my verdict. By the way, there's a lot of nice things. They compared their cards to freebooters, to Snake Eyes, and they already give some pros and cons. So they made a lot of effort. They put a lot of effort into getting some information about the card, even lore and memes. His hair smells like cheddar cheese. Might be right. Gonna taste it. put something on my board. Anyways, I was a bit skeptical on the card. I gave the concept a 2 out of 5. I'm always a bit skeptical on rating cards, so bear with me. But, well, obviously I like it that you get some mana reduction. That's basically where the additional point comes from. Like, you get a reduction on card draw, and that's pretty interesting since you can enable some combos. Obviously it's a lot of RNG, but if the reduction of the card is just 1, I think on almost basically on all cards you get a reduction, unless you have like a mirrored token. So it's pretty interesting to have that mana reduction. I think the problem with this card is that basically if you want to how do I pronounce it? Well, if you want to utilize this card pretty well, you're basically losing because your opponent is everything on your own baseline. So surviving this card, or surviving and playing this card for a lot of value, is super difficult. So I'm not sure if that is the best thing you want to do. Otherwise, maybe let's just draw 1 card and improve its mana reduction. Would have been a bit more interesting. Just like a freebooters, this card cycles itself and it becomes very cheap if you are letting your opponent pressure you a bit more. Now it just feels like you want to cycle or draw 3 or 4 cards, and then it just becomes super duper dangerous. And well, only 1 mana reduction doesn't really is that much of a game changer. So the balance, I would say 1 out of 5, because I don't see this card ever being played. But please prove me wrong, and that's maybe a wink to Sheepyard Studios by creating some card like this in the game. And the design, well, I really like the design, as you already heard. Like the mana reduction, putting some pressure on your own base. I think those are very interesting mechanics. It's just, yeah, I think it needs to be improved upon. And as an optional criteria, I added art, because you can see they made their own art, and I really like this one. Looks very Storm-like-ish. And well, I think congrats to the person who made this art. I think it was Truxis, so good job, man. So next card. This is by the team Get It On VDOs. No clue who they are, but yeah. Let's look at the card first. So basically at the start of your turn, create a 4-strength bingo token structure on a random tile. If there are 4 tokens bordering your base, you win the match. So my first thing is like interesting. It's basically duplicates itself. Doesn't really look like something it duplicates itself, but I like the art nonetheless. Putting some structure vibe on, like the electrics. Pretty interesting. So for the card, start of your turn, create a 4-strength bingo token structure on a random tile. I'm not sure about the random tile though. That feels super random. Like, is it only on the tiles in your own front line? Or can it also be your opponent's baseline? It's like super duper random. And it can be horrible, it can be very good. And well, look at the mana. It costs 5 mana, you get 3 strength, maxed out 5 for 8. So if you combine this with Mia, basically on 7 mana you have 16 strength, and your opponent needs to destroy both of them, otherwise they will just go out of control. It just becomes really weird, because what is the late game like if you have like 4 of these structures, then you have 8 structures the next turn. Like, your opponent can hardly ever win. So the last couple of turns before you win the match just becomes very awkward. And otherwise, if you do not win, then this thing just gets out of control. So it's a bit wonky. And well, what I do like, if there are 4 tokens bordering your base, win the match. I'm not completely sure if you want to have something like this, because having structures on your own baseline is super risky. And if you lose basically baseline, you will just be hoping your opponent doesn't have any movers, which you can basically block you from playing any cards. It sounds not like a healthy situation, but I do like that they are looking into alternative win condition. So basically 4 tokens bordering your base. I'm not sure if you call 4 tokens bordering because, well, it is a token, it's also a structure. Oh well, that's just the naming convention, tomato tomato. So let's go to the verdict. I gave the concept a 3 out of 5 because I do like something duplicating. Not sure if it's in this way, and I also do like an alternative win condition. So that's where the 3 out of 5 points come from. But sadly I needed to give it 1 out of 5 because the challenge was to create a unit and not a structure. And this is definitely a structure. I'm not sure if that is impact on the other judges. I was just reading it like this, so I cannot give you like bonus points for something that isn't the challenge. But both scores. Balance, it's 1 out of 5. Basically, you're gonna win immensely and your opponent can't do anything to stop you. Or you will just basically never play this card because you are not winning. And you basically need to win or get into very, very late game to basically get this card out of control. So I'm not sure if the balance is that well. So I gave it 1 out of 5. The design, well, I like the design obviously because I like the duplicating stuff. Not sure if it is actually something for constructs. Obviously we got Project Phoenix, we got the Finite Loopers spawning another construct token. So it seems to fit in there somewhat, but I just don't feel it like this is something construct do. Maybe it's just me. So sorry if you do not like that argument. It's just my feeling. And the art, I gave it a 4 out of 5 because this looks pretty sick. I like the lines. It looks like it could have been into Stormbound with some fine tuning. So pretty sweet. Let's go to the next one. And now we go to the AGMM's team. And that's the card Homestuck Brewers. Put me a little bit lower. So before attacking a unit bordering your base or a friendly structure, drain 4 strength from all units bordering that structure or base. So it's basically a drain, but now you need to use this card when it's on your own baseline or when you basically place a Fort of Emerald and then attack an opponent unit, which also is bordering enemy units. That's how I read it. Oh, all units, so also your own units. Yeah, obviously. It's 6 mana, 3 strength, 1 movement, and scales out to 6 mana, 6 strength, 1 movement, and the drain goes from 3 to 5 on the last level. So stat wise, I think it's pretty good, but it just feels really weird since you just drain everything. And basically you do not want to drain yourself, but I think it might be fine because you can make a really big unit, especially on late levels. Things like Confinement, which are commonly used, is a killer of this card. So I think if you want to play Homestuck Brewers, you need to focus on having your opponent putting adjacent units. So basically the fun thing is that this card forces your opponent to place things diagonally from each other. And as a opponent, if you're facing Shadowfen, you most likely want to place your units bordering each other. So this counters actually the whole point of countering Shadowfen, since you cannot place your units bordering anymore, you cannot place them diagonally from each other. So you need to make like horse jumps, like they cannot even surround each other anymore. So that's a bit weird. Not really into the team, it feels like for me. And before attacking a unit bordering your base or a friendly structure, sounds like a whole mouthful of text. So yeah, but I understand that you also want to, or a friendly structure, because otherwise you only have your own base and then it becomes not that interesting because it doesn't trigger that often and becomes really well, situational. And the drain 4 strength, well, obviously it's Witches of the Wild. It feels a bit also like Lara's King in Exile, the legendary feline, which deals a lot of damage bordering and stuff, like the Confuse, Melodious Sisters, Hair Raising Cats, those kind of things. Only now with the drain mechanic. Let's go to the Voiding. Oh, the concept, a 3 out of 5. I do like a new thing where you force your opponent to react on countering Shadowfen. So that's pretty interesting. And I like the situational things I do actually like. But I'm not sure if it's good enough. So yeah. It's interesting. I'm not completely sure what to tell about it anymore. So for the balance, I will say 3 out of 5. I think this seems to be working pretty decently. Obviously, like all the other cards, you don't know until you play it. But you can also drain from yourself. You can trigger this on your own elders as well. So it's another elder trigger thingy unit. And it's very good defensively. It's a late game card. So that might actually work. The design, well, I do think it fits in the drain mechanics of Shadowfen and the Ravens. And it just tries to give it a little something special, because it needs to be bordering your base. And that really goes into the flavor of the Homestuck Brewers. Like the name just fits its ability pretty well. And the art, I give it a 4 out of 5. What I do like about the art is the background. Like basically it's showing, I'm not sure about the pot of golds, but it's most likely for the Brewers. But the castle behind, it's a lot of signing and intuitivity on how the card ability actually works. And it really looks like a raven and brewing something. So well done to the designer of the card art. So next card. So now we're going to Team Permafrost. So that's and they basically made a card called Marionette Prince. On play, randomly spawn a 1 strength friendly monarch bordering your base. When it dies, destroy this. And it's basically a cheap card with movement with a lot of strength. And it goes even to 12 strength for 4 mana. So that's like 300%. That's pretty sweet. And it has 1 movement. So this is a bit like the Prophets, the Fateless Prophets or the Yowling Weavers. It is a very strong card with a negative ability. And what is the negative ability? Well, that's the Shadow Monarch. On death, destroy the prince which spawned this. And if we scroll down a little bit, we will see that it has 1 strength, 0 movement. So it's just a weak body. But most likely, if you're going to use this card, you're going to do it for pressuring your opponent's base. Or you're guys going to tank an opponent's unit. And you got a 1 strength dude, which basically makes this die pretty quickly. But you can also buff this Shadow Monarch. Use this as if you are a Shadowfen. You can use this for witches. You can use this for your obsidian butchers. Even with Klaxi, it's nice that it has a Klaxi. So it's also another token which you can buff with Kindred's Grace, Primal Combragda. There are a lot of things you can do with it. And it's still just 4 mana. So you can beat something up and have a token as well. So it is a bad thing, obviously, because if your opponent does execute, then it can instantly destroy Marionette Prince. But if you're going to use an execute on it, then you are basically losing already. Since you are spending 4 mana to deal with 4 mana, and your opponent most likely, or the person who played the Marionette Prince, got a lot of value out of its strength initially. So you are just losing tempo, your opponent is doing great. So I think this is a pretty interesting card. I like the bad side effect. And it's a hero. Doesn't matter actually. Not sure if this should be any unit type. So let's go to the verdict. So I gave the concept a 4 out of 5. Since I actually really like the idea of a very strong unit which spawns a unit that basically relies on not dying. Otherwise it will just destroy itself. So pretty sweet. The balance, I gave it 3 out of 5. I'm not sure how all those... Well, I would give it higher if I didn't see any like side bonus effects of the Shadow Monarch. I think this 1 strength token is actually pretty sweet, which you can utilize a lot. So I think this is not as much as a negative effect. So I'm not sure if that actually forces me to put the balance on 3 out of 5, since it may just be overpowered all the way. And the design I gave 2 out of 5. There's not a lot of flavor on this card. It's a neutral hero, which basically doesn't do anything with the flavor. Or obviously it is Marionette Prince and the Shadow Monarch. That's pretty sweet. But besides its synergy and flavor with itself, it doesn't have a lot of flavor outside with anything. So that's why I just gave it a 2 out of 5. And no art points, because no art was created. So let's go to the last one. And this is from Helios John Falters. I think it's Helios. And they created the Horned Negotiator. When played bordering your base, command all units backwards. Give 2 strength to all friendly surrounding units. So we are looking at a Pen Heralds right here. And a reversed Forgotten Souls heralds him or something. So that's a pretty interesting thing. Like the Pen Heralds, well, obviously it works. And it's the alternative playstyle of Shadowfen. We also got a lot of it already. We got Bucks of Wasteland. Actually, this dude on the card art. And we got Pen Heralds. So there are already some buffers that do AoE buffs. And well, obviously we got the fun companions as well, but that's just a minor thingy. And what is interesting is that command all units backwards. So basically that's the alternative. Like normally Shadowfen or Swarm goes rushing down your opponents, and with the Queen of Hearts playstyle you basically want to slow down the pace, just want to put so much value on the board you will just win. And that's what this card is for. But it is a weird one that your units command backwards. But it might also be interesting since you can destroy any front your opponent has. And before it moves backwards, you have a bit more units most likely that you will surround and give a buff to. So I do find it a bit strange. Since it doesn't really feel like Swarm. But also it does, since it is command and it is in Pen Heralds. So let's go to my verdict. And I gave the concept a 2 out of 5. And well, I like the command all units backwards. But basically this is just well, it feels like a smash up from Pen Heralds and Forgotten Souls or Herald's Hymn. So I wasn't really that excited about it. But they do something funny with it. But just not, yeah, I can't imagine how it will be in game. I think it will be mostly awkward. For the balance, I gave it a 2 out of 5. And that's most likely because I think it's a bit weak. And very slow. I think if you're gonna start using this card, obviously on high level it becomes pretty good, since you have like a lot of units on the board. But before that point, I'm not sure if you want to play this card. Most likely I will just prefer to play Queen of Hearts, Bucks of Wasteland, some other more consistent strong stuff. And not maybe this dude. And the design I gave 3 out of 5. Yeah, obviously it fits pretty well with the Swarm, with the Pen Heralds. It has all commands, so everybody is used to what this card can do. And it commands its units backwards, which is an interesting add-on for the archetype of Shadowfen that basically is a bit more control orientated and tries to win with pure value and buffing each other up. So that's the design, and fits in the theme of that archetype from the Swarm deck. So that's it for my video about talking about this card competition. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more of this, then let me know, and I will most likely do another review of cards. And See you then. Cheers.